Now I did move the squaring platform forward enough so I could travel my sample hammers, and now I've moved it back so that the hammer square will automatically go into place at, got to tweak this again. There's a seesaw effect between the two ends. So I did this end first and then that end. But anyway, I forgot to mention that when I was testing my bore distance in the action, I confirmed its accuracy by taking the level of the action. In this case, I'm doing it off of the MDF platform the action rests on, and confirming it when the hammer was at strike with this leveling device. And so these shanks were level at strike with the action all assembled and the regulating rack set up. When everything came apart, I can now set up to making these shanks level and know that I'm at strike. Okay, I just want to give you my view, if I can, or to some degree if I can, of traveling shanks with the shank traveler. I lift it with a round surface so it's not interfering. And I have a white background. And it's hard to get exactly the right angle, but this is pretty darn good. The eye can see this because you aim the eye and it's steady. My hand is not as steady. But the reference edges indicate clearly whether it goes to the left or the right. In the base section, many of them were spot on. Most of the ones that weren't quite spot on had a previous piece of shimming cloth, shimming paper underneath the flange, and just by cleaning that out, silly me, as I put on the base section of shanks first, assumed that the shims were glued down or in a fixed place, and I just stuck the shanks on, and so I paid a price by having to pull them back out again. In the remainder of the action, I cleaned them away first and then applied the shanks. So it'll be interesting to see. But a thing that you can do, which we're all familiar with once you've gone through one by one, is just to check, and all of these checked out. They just, they're sweet, and they're vertical. That is the key. So that when the hammer strikes the strings and bounces back, it will have approached the strings vertically, and it will tend to bounce back vertically. And we're going to square the hammers to vertical so that we fit the strings to the top of the hammer, which both levels the strings and mates the surface of hammer crown to strings in the same process. And so that surface will be horizontal, the surface of the hammer and the undersurface of the strings, so that will also reinforce a direct bounce back, which aids repetition, of course, and also stresses the centers less. Okay, I'll let you watch a little bit of this. The first one has tested out to be vertical. Next one's vertical. Next one's vertical. I tell you, these WNG composite parts, oh, that one's got the slightest hint of going to the base. Okay, if it is headed to the base, then we shim the upper side. And this is a fairly thickly cut. It's probably a little bit wider than my ideal. But what I do is put a small amount on lengthwise. And the longer I make it, the more difference it has in how much it tilts the flange. Another way to do it would be to have a skinny piece and move the piece in and out this way. Skinny pieces are just harder to work with. As I say, this is a slight amount more than my ideal, but it works. Let's see how well it works. And you want to push the flange right back against its little stop rail so that when we hang the hammers, they're in alignment with each other, but also in an easy place to go back to. So if we take one off and put it back, it comes out to the same spot again. There we go. Going to the base just a little. Perfect. Get the idea. Visually, assessing the travel of the shank relative to one or the other of the reference edges is one way to use the shank traveler. Another way is to position the shank close enough so that it's free at one end and rubs at another, and you can feel it. In this case, it's catching at the top, traveling a little bit to the base, and you can also hear it as it scrapes. So you actually have three senses assessing this shank: a feel, a visual, and an oral. the traveling is done. And just as a check for my shanks being seated before I proceed to hang hammers, there's a little score mark on the WNG flanges, which should line up. Now here's one that doesn't line up. And another way to test is just with a straight edge, and sure enough, it has a little bit of a space. And you can hear it when I reseat it.